Hello and welcome back to Green Money Momentum, where we talk about market movements, making money, and money momentum. I'm your host, Trevor, and we are here for Thursday's daily talk of stock. And well, not the best day overall for the markets. As you can see, I have the red shirt, the red tie, and the heat map is full of red. So a pretty bloody day within the markets, a pretty broad sell-off. But if you are a bull like myself, this could be a lot of buying opportunities that just presented themselves, because it is always recommended to buy the dip over time as long as you were in great plays and opportunities, which on this channel I feel like we are. So we're going to be talking about some individual stocks today, but first covering the news and why the markets went down today. Well, more fear, uncertainty, and doubt around the Federal Reserve. This week, we did have Jerome Powell speak at a little bit of a press conference, or an interview, I should say. And at this interview, some took what the Fed chairman said as being hawkish. And so because of that, there is some mixed opinions right now around the market, and things inside the Federal Reserve also seem to be mixed, as some are really wanting to cut rates while others still want to be data dependent and wait. And tomorrow, when we do talk about data, it is going to be a pretty big day, because we do have the numbers all around the PCE index. This is for inflation, and this is the Fed's preferred measurement for inflation. And so some right now are fearing that the Fed does not cut again in October. Right now, there is an 85% projection that they do, and a 15% chance that they don't. And so the markets are lingering on this decision for tomorrow to see what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. And so with this being said, yes, the markets did trail off a little bit. We do look at the major indexes of the S&P and the NASDAQ. Things have been a pretty bit bloody this week, but that is all in the short term. When we just zoom out and when we look at what we have seen this last year, things have been hyper bullish since Liberation Day, and we are still on that crazy ride up. And so I am still very, very bullish on the markets. And in general, the sell-off that we have seen this week really has not been too bad. Really, the only people that this has hurt a lot, and I'm sorry to say this if this offends anybody, but this is just people who are over leveraged that are hurt by this, because right now a lot of great buying opportunities are presenting themselves within the market. And I do believe that the markets will continue to rip up. What I believe has happened is that we have seen a little bit of a sell-off because of the news of the Federal Reserve finally cutting rates and just some profit taking. But in general, when we look at the markets, we must remember that it is a marathon and not a race. So we just never need to over leverage ourselves, because I bet what has happened to many investors and why they are feeling so fearful is they over leveraged right before the Federal Reserve cut rates, or even right after, thinking that this super bullish momentum in the markets would continue. And now in the short term, they have been hurt. Well, to those individuals, what I will say is the bullish momentum should continue in the markets. I am very bullish on the markets, but as an investor, I always remain cautious, because when we do look at different time frames within the markets, little moments can be pretty bearish, can be pretty bloody, but those are just small bears in the bigger bull. And so recently, the bears have been pretty loud because of what we have seen, and not just the negative bears on the market, but also the positive bear that we all love. This is going to be the first stock that we cover, Mr. Big Bear AI. So BBAI recently has had some pretty bullish momentum. Now, this week has been ugly in the markets, but this has been one of the best plays this week, at least in my portfolio. And when we just look at technical analysis, in the short term, we have had a very bullish movement within the Big Bear, because we did bounce off the 200-day moving average, which is very positive, showing that Big Bear is in an overall bullish trend, and we have returned to these levels of consolidation, which Big Bear was at right before the earnings report. Now, we did once again get rejected by the highest level in this consolidation, but still very positive movements within the Big Bear. I really like what we have seen, because with Big Bear, with how aggressive the sell-off was after the earnings, I am just very happy to see Big Bear back up to the $7 range. Now, I do expect Big Bear to possibly continue to trade sideways for some time, especially if the numbers tomorrow are a bit negative. But in general, I am a bull on the markets, and I do believe that we will break through this level of resistance. And right now, while the markets are feeling fearful, and if tomorrow ends up being a little bit more red, this is all okay with me, because I will just take the opportunity to buy into Big Bear at even larger of a position if things are bloody enough. So with Big Bear, I do play in this position. I do have a long-term position of shares with Big Bear. I also have a lot of leaps into the future, so a lot of options contracts that are far out to expiration. And then in the short term, I am playing with BAIG, so BAG. If you want to get a bag, play with BAG. This is the double leveraged Big Bear AI. And while Big Bear is gaining a lot of momentum, and while the markets in general are gaining a lot of momentum, I am not going to fight the trend, and I am not going to fight the Fed. So something that I believe that we will start hearing a lot coming up as the markets continue to progress forward, because despite whatever the Federal Reserve is saying right now, I do believe we will get more rate cuts. I believe that we will keep hearing, don't fight the Fed, don't fight the Fed, because let's remember that the trend is your friend. And I do believe that the trend in Big Bear is going to stay more towards the bullish side. We did just get big announcements with Big Bear yesterday. They have their strongest balance sheet in the history of the company, and they have had a ton of customer acquisition this last year. So I have a lot of belief within the Big Bear. I do believe that the trend will continue. And with Big Bear AI, I am playing in the short term with BAIG. If you want a bag in Big Bear, I suggest looking at BAIG. It's the double leveraged Big Bear. So when Big Bear goes up by 1%, BAG goes up by 2%. But with Big Bear, when we do zoom out in the short term, there could again be some more bleeding. But what I am hoping for is just to stay in this level of consolidation, because recently we were very bought on the relative strength index. We are still a bit overvalued, but we have came down a bit. We are also seeing some bullish momentum on the MACD, so we have elevated there. Hopefully we stay elevated. We do not cross back over, but in general, it does look like the bulls have taken control of the Big Bear. And in general, the macros the last couple days were pretty fearful. So for Big Bear to stay elevated, to me, this is a positive sign. There's a lot of institutional investors who have entered into Big Bear, a big retail community that is very interested in Big Bear, and the government is interested in Big Bear because they work with the government, they work with the military, they work at the airports, they work internationally. So they are all around us. This is a real company. It's so funny. In my video the other day where I talked about Big Bear once again reaching $8, somebody in the comment section was saying that Big Bear is a scam. I could assure that investor that Big Bear is not a scam. There's a lot of true intrinsic value within this company, and this is why I am a bull on the Big Bear over the long term. So I'm very excited with BBAI. I do believe that this stock will break out of this level of consolidation, and in general, the markets again are still in an upwards bullish cycle. So if you think that this is a major sell-off, again, maybe you were just a little over leveraged, because when we look at the major indexes, how elevated they are, when we look at how elevated Tesla is right now, Bitcoin, all these different assets, I mean, it's crazy to even say that it is a red day when Bitcoin is sitting at 110,000. And so now talking about cryptocurrencies, we're going to now talk about BMNR, which takes advantage of the mass adoption of cryptocurrency, which we are going into. But things in BMNR a bit bloody today, down by 5%, back down under $50. And in general, we know with BMNR, they look at Ethereum because they have the largest Ethereum holdings in the world. So BMNR, a massive crypto treasury company. Most companies do it with Bitcoin. This company does it. They do have some Bitcoin, but does it mainly with Ethereum. And Ethereum having some rough movements today, getting back under $4,000, which is just a psychological mark. And in general, just causes more fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Seeing it go from 4,000 back down to the 3,000, it's just a psychological mark for investors, maybe causing a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But in general, Ethereum is still looking very bullish. We are still above the 200-day moving average. And then when we look at the other indicators of Ethereum on the relative strength index and on the MACD, we are very undervalued on the relative strength index. We are falling on the MACD, so we may still see some small short-term bearish movements within Ethereum and all of crypto, but we should be seeing a reversal sooner than later. And with BMNR, this company taking advantage of what is to come within Ethereum, that is why I am personally investing into BMNR. They are a treasury company. They are also a mining company, and they have the TV superstar of Tom Lee on their side. So it is always helpful anytime you have a representative of the company that is well known and will go on national television, kind of opposite of Big Bear AI. Even though I like Big Bear, their CEO, and really no representatives of Big Bear talk to the media. And so I think it's a positive that Tom Lee does. And in general, all the treasury companies are kind of in a short-term bear market themselves. Since the Federal Reserve cut, none of these treasury assets have really ran up too much, but there's a lot of intrinsic value here. And in general, just like we have been covering on this channel, I do believe that we are going into the mass adoption into cryptocurrency. The president has done a lot for crypto this year. Again, we are seeing so many companies do this big treasury plan with crypto, and the whole world has their eyes on cryptocurrency, especially with what is happening with the US dollar right now. A lot are fearful of that. And some even think that there could be a major move coming from the United States where they get us to all adopt into Bitcoin with the crashing of the United States dollar and all that. Now, that is a long-term thought, and that is where also I believe that the bears are ridiculous. I do not believe that the US dollar will collapse. I know that gold is going up. I know that some are fearful. I know the dollar index is going down, but we should see a rebound on it sooner than later. And if there is going to be a collapse in the United States dollar, I think it is going to be many years from now. But even with that being said, cryptocurrency is going to continue to rise. And with the Federal Reserve cutting rates, this is most massive for risk assets and cryptocurrency. And so crypto will have its big pop, but in the short term, I do believe this is just a short-term bear. And for investors, what I would recommend, although I upload videos every day and I like to look at the markets every day, that is because I do have this YouTube channel, right? It is kind of my commitment to you and to myself to journal my journey, and then just to try to help other investors. You know, we're all on a journey together. But what I would say for days like today, or just the whole month in general, you know, with the markets, we need to be patient, because it is the impatient that give their money to the patient. And nobody could truly predict exactly when the markets are going to push up or what is going to happen on what exact date. But we could take all the news and data and formulate a bigger opinion. And when we do just look at all the news and data, we really are going into a bigger quantitative easing cycle. Again, no matter what the Federal Reserve is saying this week, or even what they say after tomorrow, we should be getting more rate cuts later this year, because it doesn't make sense just to cut by 25 basis points and leave it there. The markets will continue to jump up. The whole economy is based on these markets. And so the Fed is not going to absolutely crush the markets, no matter what they are saying in the short term, because the Fed knows that everybody is looking at what they are saying. So they cannot be too hawkish and they cannot be too dovish either, because the markets have such a knee-jerk reaction to the Fed. So that was our second play there, BMNR. Now we're going to get into the next crypto miner, which many investors are not happy with right now. This is Michael Saylor's company, MicroStrategy. He is who started this big old treasury idea with all these cryptocurrencies. And well, as we could see, we did have a gap down in MSTR. So we have been falling in MSTR for quite some time. I mean, this stock has been falling since 2024. So it has been an ugly year in MSTR. We were recently in this level of consolidation right after we dropped under the 200-day moving average, but we did have this big gap down today. So I know a lot of investors, I've already seen it online, are not happy currently with what they are seeing in MSTR. But I would say the same thing as I said in BMNR. With this, you know, the markets, again, in the short term, this is ugly with MSTR, but in the long term, this company has a lot of true intrinsic value. These companies that are crypto treasury companies are in a short-term bear, and all we need to do is just zoom out, look away. If you are having too much fear, uncertainty, and doubt, just zoom out and look away, because right now where MSTR is, it sits at a great spot for a potential buying opportunity for anybody who wants to enter into MSTR for the first time or add to their position. Because again, we are well under that 200-day moving average. And when we look at the history of MSTR, it has always bounced off the 200-day moving average. And so it is looking very bearish in the short term. But with us being under that 200-day MA, we are also low on the relative strength index, and we are also a bit low on the MACD. And so I do believe that the momentum will spark up in MSTR. This company right here is a Bitcoin treasury. They have the largest holding of Bitcoin in the world. And Michael Saylor has been on a campaign recently talking to the media and their whole strategy and how all their Bitcoin holdings are working and how the inner workings of MSTR are. So I would suggest just going on YouTube and typing in Michael Saylor and seeing what he has said recently, because that guy is a genius. And in general, one of the concepts he talked about and why they hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet is because, of course, the United States dollar either is flat or does continue to lose value in the short term, where Bitcoin continues to gain in value. And so it pays a lot more to borrow Bitcoin than it does US dollar. If you're going to go into debt, you might as well do it for Bitcoin instead of doing it for US dollar. And MicroStrategy in their last earnings had their best quarter ever when it comes to earnings per share. We could see that there was a massive jump up there, and that is because they were able to finally put the unrealized gains of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, considering Bitcoin as actual currency, because that is how they look at it, right? They are holding Bitcoin like many hold on to US dollars. So they just had their largest quarter ever. They're going to have their next quarter in 34 days. And many may not like what they see here, seeing that this is their largest earnings ever, and that is why. But in general, this is what MSTR is now as a company. They still do have a little bit of their original underlying company of MicroStrategy, or strategy as they call it now, but really they are more of a Bitcoin reserve and a Bitcoin bank, and they are doing a lot with Bitcoin on the inside, again, with MicroStrategy when it comes to loaning and how they have everything worked out. There's also other statistics such as MNAV. A lot of YouTubers talk all about that. It's some very complex stuff, just like the cryptocurrency space is very complex. But what I could say in general, again, just going to the original kind of bigger picture of everything, is the Federal Reserve is cutting rates and things are getting a bit more stimulative and better. And the Fed will continue to cut rates throughout this year. Now, next month in October, if we do get a pause for this this month, that will be no problem, because we will get the rate cuts later this year. And in general, we are going into that larger cycle of quantitative easing. So they're only short-term pullbacks for what we should be seeing going forward within the markets. But I would be curious to hear what everyone else thinks in the comment section below. Please let me know if you are bullish or bearish on the markets and how you are feeling going into tomorrow's PCE index reports. And again, days like today are very exciting for me because I did not add to any positions. I did not sell any positions, but I am just watching the markets, and movements like this are still so small in the bigger picture, really only big if you are putting too much money into one position. So what I will finish with, what I always recommend to investors, the way to think about it, because we are all managing our own portfolios, is what we are professional speculators. So we are trying to do our best when it comes to speculation, buying into great stocks and opportunities, and then however long you hold on it, that's up to you, whether you're a short-term speculator or whether you're a long-term investor. So we have that side of the equation, but we also need to be professional risk managers. And with days like today, well, it shows why we need to be very smart when it comes to risk management. But thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next Daily Talk of Stock. Everybody, have a great day.